And here we are. Happy 2021, everyone. We fixed the thermometer, Ian. We've fixed the thermometer.
Is that why it feels so much warmer down here?
Yes, that's right. Here in the spoiler room, it is no longer 52 degrees KB. Thank you for joining me on that. That was a lot of fun.
So, that was great.
You know, I enjoyed it. We closed it out great. If people haven't caught the Friday the 13th episode, that ended up really fun. Even more fun than I expected. So I just have to put out that Kara wanted to be here tonight, but she couldn't make it. So it's just you and me again, Ian.
That's all right. This apple is big enough for two.
You bite it from one side and I'll bite it from the other. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, none of that talk. This is a family show.
What family? The Addams family, maybe.
We should have recorded this on Wednesday. Sorry.
We should. Oh, that's naughty. Dude, that's just naughty.
Look, no. Get your mind out of the gutter. I know it's warm down there, but
it is. It's warm in places. Oh, I don't know. It's been a long day already. So,
well, hey, Mark, did you bring? I brought my BIM sigil. Do you have yours?
Oh, you've got. Wow, look at you.
Yeah.
You've got a good bib. No, I don't, but I could do a makeshift one here. Hold on.
It doesn't matter where you wear it. You just have to have it on.
There we go.
I don't even want to know what you stuck that on with.
It didn't stick too well. So, oh well.
It's great because there are people watching this who probably have no idea what we're talking about. Much like I would not have a mere few hours ago before I'd watched The Apple. Like BIM sigil.
The BIM sigil, yes. So yes, folks, this episode, not only are we, this is like serving like multi-purpose tonight. This episode, it is our first episode of 2021. It is our first episode for the month, which we're doing 1980 the musical for January's theme. And what's that mean? We're going to be covering 80s from musicals from 1980 specifically, because I didn't realize just how many, I just didn't realize how many musicals had come out at that time. And you know what? I bet you I've got all kinds of echo tonight. Bear with me just one moment.
I'm not hearing any echo.
No, but there's going to be echo on my recording. That's for sure.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, my patrons I apologize ahead of time for their echo. But before our pre-talk, but yes, not only does this kick off our January month of 1980 the musical, but it is our first Canon Fodder episode. Yes, that's right. 12 months. And each month we are talking a Canon Fodder episode. And no, I'm not linking the films between each one like last year.
You coward.
I gotta space that out, man. Maybe next year. I don't know. But this year, and these Canon films were voted on by folks like you out there. We put a poll out there and you voted. And so we took the top 12 votes. And so the Apple, though, was not on the list because I pulled rank. And I said, by God, I want to do this movie. And we did. So that's the only one I pulled rank on as producer, whatever. So, whatever you want to call me for this show. I'm sure people have called me a lot of things. But as Ian has, probably when the camera goes off, he's like, what the fuck?
No. You've been my sensei in this journey of year-long, almost year-long. It's crazy.
Yes. And I appreciate that. And glad you're still here. You didn't go run away screaming. So I appreciate that quite a bit.
Well, look, here's the problem. I mean, you put out these lists of movies that you're going to talk about. I'm like, all right, I got to dial it back. I'm trying to do my own show and all this other stuff and squeezing in extra time to record and watch movies. And then I look at the list. I'm like, well, I've never seen that movie before. I've never heard of that movie before. I haven't watched that movie in a long time. I should probably get a revisit. So, as Michael Corleone once said, I thought I was out and you pull me back in.
I corrupt all kinds of people. So. And speaking of corruption and other things, tonight we are talking The Apple 1980. Yes, 1980 the musical, and it's a Canon Fodder episode. And Ian, give us a synopsis of The Apple. Go.
Cara, why couldn't you be here tonight? Like why do I have to give the synopsis of The Apple? Okay, I'll try. It's here's what The Apple is. If Andy Warhol directed The Devil's Advocate as a prequel to Streets of Fire, that would be this movie.
Wow. That's oddly not far off.
No. It takes place in the far-flung year of 1994.
So far ahead.
Yes, even for 1980. It's amazing to think that we were going to go from 1980s fashion to space age, like foam silver shoulder pads and all this futuristic Jetson stuff. But, here we are. There is a international business entertainment mogul named Boogaloo. Boogaloo, yes, sorry, Deuce Boogaloo, who owns everything or wants to own everything, and he has a reality variety show musical competition that he puts on, and it's rigged by him, I guess, but there's a challenge to the act that he has concocted for the 1994 show. This lovely little Canadian couple named Alfie and Bibi. Bibi is played by the lovely Catherine Mary Stewart, who you may have some passing knowledge of. I don't know. Maybe have you talked to her recently?
Yes, there is an interview to tie in with this. This actually another multi-purpose for this episode. I'm doing a playlist called The Complete Package. I'm going to try to do one every month where you get not only a spoiler room like this one, you'll get a final cut episode review of The Apple. You'll get in its Vinylly Mind review of The Apple, and in this case an interview with the fantastic Catherine Mary Stewart, who was kind enough to once again visit the spoiler room and talk to us about her first feature film. So yes,
and it's a great turn in a movie that's an absolute mess. To continue on with my synopsis, this Boogaloo, I think I got his name right, zeroes in on this wholesome young Canadian couple from Moose Jaw, which that was the first time I actually put it together that Kevin Smith's proposed conclusion to his Canadian hockey trilogy was Moose Jaws. I didn't realize there was a pun on the town. So that was a revelation in a movie that's full of biblical references. So yeah, he tries to corrupt Bibi and Alfie. Only Bibi really goes along. So Alfie is cast out of the Garden of Paradise. He kind of becomes a bum who wants to get his girl back, but she's now surrounded by all sorts of media attention and becoming an international superstar. And Boogaloo is the devil. And yeah, that's the movie. Except for the part where God shows up at the end. Denomalos from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
As well as I identified him to my best friend today, he's not only I am Denomalous, but he's also diplomatic immunity from Lethal Weapon 2, and we've lost another submarine from Hunt for Red October. So he was, all right. He was Anton. He was the guy talking to the other defense secretary in the room, talking about you have him.
The I believe late great Joss Ackland.
Yes.
Who this is the first time I've really noticed that he had hair. Like he's got these nice golden locks. I'm like, that's a great look for you, Joss Ackland. I know when he shows up at the end and raptures everybody. That was a nice surprise.
Well, considering he's also the lead of the hippie refugees from the 60s who are in 94 still living a vagabond life, free, carefree, and Yeah, the film's got hippies, it's got the devil, it's got snake, it's got a large apple, it's got dance numbers, songs, it's got futuristic shoulder pads. It's got this film just runs the gambit of just things. And yeah, Ian, I know this was your first watch.
Well, it also has a PG rating.
Well, we're talking PG in 1980. That's completely different than PG of today.
Mark, I understand, we are now in the culture where WAP is a number one. They probably have a fucking Kids Bop version of WAP by now. But in 1980, in the climax of The Apple, there is an entire musical number complete with simulated, fully clothed but scantily clad sex, a song called Coming.
Yes.
And it's about a demon lady seducing our fair-haired Adam stand-in and having like incredibly passionate sex with him. The lyrics, Mark. The lyrics. What is it? Okay.
I have the vinyl right here. Let me see if I got the lyrics sheet. This one. Yeah.
Come to me, come do me, I'll come for you, drain every drop of your love, coming just for you, ooh, 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 ooh. Copyright. Yes. Now I'm quoting, before anyone censors me from YouTube for pornography, I'm quoting a PG-rated 1980 quote-unquote family film. How? How does this movie have a PG rating?
Dude, Howard the Duck had duck boobs. Come on.
But that was a few years later.
Still had duck boobs. Well, that doesn't make it any worse that it was still PG. I don't care if it was 80 or 80.
Look, that was at least animal anatomy. This was straight up screwing.
That wasn't animal. That was regular human boobs on a duck. How is that animal anatomy?
It was an alien animal. We don't know what alien duck female anatomy looks like.
Well, they don't show I guess we do now, but they do have the song. Now, mind you, the song, while doing some digging on this movie, the song that's performed by a very talented artist. Let's see, I forgot her name offhand, but
she was talented, yeah.
Is it Grace Kennedy? I think it was. Yeah. She does Coming. And she also did the other song, I Found Me, and they released those. I found a picture. It looked like they released it on a promotional 45 with just those two songs because she was a recording artist. In fact, everybody who sang parts were actually musical artists except for Catherine, which it's revealed in my interview later. I had the veil pulled back behind my eye, over my, away from my eyes, and the truth was revealed about the singing of her parts in this movie, which I was like, oh, that's unfortunate, but if you watch Rock and Roll Christmas from last year, you can hear Catherine Mary Stewart's voice, actual singing voice in that one, which is it's a good voice, but.
Is it like number one recording artist contract with the devil worthy?
No, it's better than that. It's better than that. But actually, it's listed on here. Mary Hyland is actually the one who did the music, the voice for Catherine Mary Stewart. And what's interesting is that voice actually matches so well with Catherine. I thought for sure that was Catherine singing.
And I found out this afternoon because I was looking up the lyrics for these songs.
Sure.
That was, I'm glad you cleared that up because I saw another name on there that was not Catherine Mary Stewart. I'm like, is that a pseudonym or does she really not sing? Because that was surprising to me because the lip syncing or whatever matches up very well. And as you mentioned that they found a suitable voice. Like I believe that voice was coming out of that actress and that character.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about something really upsetting, I looked up Howard the Duck on IMDb. First of all, it's got an anniversary this year, 1986. But second of all, it only has a 4.7 rating on IMDb. Third of all, the still that they have for it, I know Leah Thompson, America's Sweetheart, was in that movie, but they have a still. The big still they have next to the Howard the Duck poster is actually a frame from Back to the Future with her and Michael J. Fox.
Damn it. And IMDb, get your shit together. What?
Seriously, you've got one job.
You've got one job. I mean, just look on the internet and you'll get every shot of her in the negligee on the bed next to Howard the Duck. But no, they can't put an actual shot from the movie there.
Well, I just remember when she found the condom in his wallet and like, Howard. Yeah, I got to watch that movie again.
Speaking of odd movies, but the Apple, Catherine corrected me on the pronunciation of the names as well, and so I may attempt or not attempt to mention them tonight. Go on. The first name I'm not going to. She rolled it off perfectly.
Is it Menachem?
Yes. Yeah. She said it perfectly. I was like, wow, I've been saying these names wrong the whole time, and she corrected me during the interview, which was it's a great moment in the interview, folks. You should check it out. We talked for like an hour, and it was fun. But this was his breakout. This was the film after he bought the Canon group, because that was part of the reason I wanted to do this too, because I've got the book. My wife got it for me, the Canon film guide here, and it's a great book. I mean, it doesn't read like a narrative necessarily, except for the prelogue, the intro. But this was their big break. They were going to use this film to break into the US cinema, because this was one of the first films, I guess, that they were actually producing, writing, creating under the Canon group banner to break into the US market, because it was 1980. And part of the reason why I'm doing January as the theme, 1980 the musical, is you actually had 6 musicals come out in 1980. We're covering 4 of them. One of them that we're not covering is Fame, came out at this time as well. I mean, but it was like, I couldn't believe how many musicals actually came out. And so Hollywood being the trend, he saw that all these rock musicals were going to come out, knew the popularity of Rocky Horror Picture Show, and went, hey, we can get on this bandwagon, making the Apple.
And I'm sure Grease as well, and probably Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, you really get the sense that this was, something in the water in the late 70s. I mentioned those movies in particular because there are, I don't know anything about the history of the writing of these songs. So I just watched the movie this afternoon for the first time. But there are notes, there are chords in here that are straight up out of, I Don't Know How to Love Him. Mm-hmm. Beauty School Dropout. Like when I first hear some of these songs and the Apple's starting to play, I'm like, oh, are they just going to straight up play these songs from other movies? Nope. It's their own thing. And plus at the end, you've got a car in the sky, just flying out of nowhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. The film opens and the whole musical fest that's rigged by Mr. Boogaloo played fantastically, and I do mean fantastically, by Vladek Shibal. He was I loved this character. He was so over the top villain. I mean, he needed to be twirling the mustache is all he needed.
He was like this perfect. He looked almost like Max von Sydow as Ming the Merciless. If he looked like Raul Julia playing M. Bison, just that really sickly kind of skinny devil. And yeah, he was great. I don't know that I've seen him. He had one of those looks like maybe I've seen him in other things before, but he was a totally original character. And I love that part of the way they distinguish this being like a different kind of future, aside from the fact that they've got a very, I'll call it progressive assemblage of main and supporting actors. You've got people that are, multiracial, multisexual as all hell. But this is the far-flung future of 1994, and this guy's an international media mogul. So when he gives a press conference, kind of walking and talking, he's rolling from like French to German to Italian, and without missing a beat. And you get the feeling that this actor, whoever he is, probably just grew up traveling the world or something, because it's amazing.
He does. Because after they talk about Pandy and Dee Dee, Pandy and Dandy as the pair who are singing the song BIM, B I Am, which are initials actually for Bigelow's international music, just so happens. Him switching between the languages was great. And, it's one of those things where, this film is odd. It's got bumps, it's got warts, but at the same time, there are some moments in here, like you're talking about, with our villain who is talking on a world stage and just flipping, making statement to statement until he gets to the English guy, who's the only guy who pulls out the heavy question about, this is reporting that it is rigged. Played, by the way, the reporter's played by a composer who would go on later to do a bunch of music, George S. Clinton, not the other George Clinton.
I was going to say, wow.
Everybody thinks that, but we were a lot of
changes.
We were group watching this with Dawn, and she's like, because I mentioned, oh yeah, that's George S. Clinton. He'd later go on to do composing for all kinds of songs, and she's like, that doesn't look like. She's like, oh, that you're not talking about that George. You're
not
talking about
Funkadelic, no.
Not Pete Funkadelic, who I love. Though I love his music. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's a different George Clinton. It just, but he plays this reporter, and the American one is the one that drops the heavy question, and Boogaloo pulls him aside, goes, you can ask any question you want. You're just not going to have a job tomorrow. And that's what I love, is that there's elements throughout this, especially with Boogaloo. If you look past, some of the imagery in that, there are moments in here where you're like, this could apply to today in a respect, or you could see where we're just a beat away from some of this, No,
I mean, it's not even a beat away. I mean, it's over when you talk about, we were talking before during the pre-show about Google and some of the
right.
Don't take us down, Google. But some of the way that they manipulate algorithms to achieve certain results with different people and that kind of thing. It's weird because The Apple is a complete mess of a film, one that I absolutely love, but it's almost too far ahead of its time to be believed. I know Menachem Golan wrote, or he directed it and co-wrote it with other people, but
he directed it. His wife and one other person, I forgot, a co-worker, a person. He also helped write it, but his Yoram, they produced it. I forgot who else wrote it, but initially they kind of wrote it like a stage play. Initially, the script, I guess, was initially written kind of like a Hebrew stage play that they adapted for the U.S. Musical, from what I was reading up on in the book, if I'm remembering it correctly, that they actually adapted it from a initial Hebrew written script that was intended to be a stage play.
I'm pretty sure they adapted it from a psilocybin mushroom trip, because this thing, I mean, it's almost indescribable how I felt like I was having a psychedelic experience, not just because of all the crazy clothing and fashion and songs, but because of the ideas that, I think we're hitting on something here. If this were released in 2020, it'd probably get laughed out of the theaters, but I think people would be writing about the ideas being very current, talking about corporate control or corporate partnerships with government, and those getting kind of messy to the point where BIM comes out with it. We were kind of joking about that. He's got a triangular logo that's sort of his sigil that he makes all of his underlings wear, and by the end of the movie you've got police officers going around town issuing tickets to people if they're not wearing the corporate logo,
right?
And to the point where we're talking about rules changing, overnight. We've had controversies in the last year about definitions of things changing, because something mentions something during a news story and Merriam-Webster changes the definition overnight. And so people are trying to catch up. Literally, there's a scene where a cop's like, he wands a lady who's just passing by with her groceries. He's like, hold on a second, I need to talk to you, ma'am. He wands her. And he says, you're not wearing your BIM logo. And she says, I didn't know about this. He's like, it just happened, but I got to give you a ticket. It's like, what is this? This is 1980. This is nuts.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, I'm looking at this going, I fell in, I watched it twice with no problem. And I'm with you. As odd and quirky and as messy as it is, I kind of fell for this film. I'm watching this just fascinated by the ideas along with the imagery. And it takes this dark turn, like you mentioned. At the beginning, it's like, okay, we're doing the BB Alfie thing. Yes, okay, he's kind of the devil. We're doing the storyline of taking, that storyline we've had before, where you take the innocent, talented artist, usually female, and she ends up getting corrupted by drugs and seduced by the dark side of rock and roll. And so that's like the first chunk of this movie. And then it takes this turn into this whole dystopian where you have police ticketing people for no BIM mark. You have the BIM music having played across the nation to where everybody has to stop whatever they're doing and do the BIM fitness dance as part of your fitness. They spit it as a positive, yet here we have a corporation who has become part of the government, who their product has now become mandatory, and you have to follow their rules. Otherwise, you get a ticket or possibly thrown in jail. And I'm just like sitting here going,
well, it's nice because another movie this reminded me of is Darren Aronofsky's Mother, which was, a one long biblical metaphor. And you see that in here too, except they play around with things a little bit. In that, and it didn't really click with me until about 20 minutes in the depths of this biblical metaphor during the obvious scene.
The Alfie vision, where we have basically Catherine Mary Stewart in a leaf bodysuit, and we have him with the old fig leaf over the bait and tackle, and basically, Boogaloo is the devil, and his wonderful right-hand man, played fantastically by Ray Shell. Mr. Shakes he's fantastic. I mean, if he didn't influence Ruby Rod from Fifth Element, he's like they could be brothers for sure. I mean, just the look, the hair, but he ends up being the snake, and he's the one that fetches the apple. They do the whole song in hell, where you've got two-faced people and you've got people hanging. There's this pop like da 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 da, and there's all this dark imagery, and you're just like, why?
Well, yeah, and leading up to that, it's the whole scene in Boogaloo's office where they're signing the contracts, and Alfie's like, can I take some time to read it? And then they're like, well, Mr. Boogaloo's got to be on a plane to France tomorrow, so no, just sign it right now. And he's like, I don't know about this. And then he gets this vision of an earthquake, which is, it's Star Trek effects, man. I mean, like, the camera's shaking and everyone's just kind of like dancing chaotically as if they're being shaken about. But he's the only one who can see it. And that leads into this vision of hell, which you were referencing. That hellish, the nightmare scenarios that are being played out there were genuinely creepy. And it reminded me of the remake of Suspiria. Did you see that from a couple of years ago?
I have not watched it yet. No,
Okay,
it's on my list. I started watching it, but I didn't get a chance to finish it at all. I just watched the very beginning, but I had to stop it for something, and I haven't gone back to it. But I've been told it's very good, so I just haven't watched it.
It is. I'm, I think it's great. I might be in the minority of, it's a very divisive movie, but towards the end, not to give anything away, but it diverges from the 77 Argento version in that we do get more of a hellish look at what's going underneath that school. And a lot of it when you watch it, you may think of the apple, just as I was thinking of Suspiria remake when I was watching this
Sure.
scene. I was like, that's very cool. And again, something that's decades ahead of its time. And it was there where the movie really started to click with me, because at first I thought, like, the opening dance number, the concert scene, the Bim song, I thought the guy who was, I don't know if it was what was the
It was
duo?
Pandy and Dandy.
Pandy and Dandy. Which one was the guy? Was the guy Dandy?
Yeah.
I thought his singing was atrocious. And
Mm.
but during the song that he sings in that hell, where he's kind of dressed up as the
apple,
the apple, he was great. No complaints there. I don't know. There was some musical numbers that were really off during this. There was the whole scene where it was Boogaloo and everybody that were in an office. I think it might have been in the lobby, and there's like a big choreographed thing. It's a scene where they do the trick with the midget, like the guys.
Business, because everything,
Business, yes.
All entertainment is business is entertainment in 1994. All business is entertainment in 1994.
Yeah, great song, but in terms of the delivery, like the chorus comes in, it's in like a different key. It's just really wonky. I'm like, I love the lyrics, but the delivery is just kind of garbage. But yeah, so it's a mixed bag. But it was in that hell scene that I realized this isn't just like a bubblegum pop movie like that Mark Wahlberg movie Rockstar, which is kind of the same thing. Young fanboy gets corrupted and dragged into the seedy world of drugs and rock. This movie is really about something, and it gets weirder and weirder and weirder, and I just couldn't turn away.
You can't. You're going down a rabbit hole with these characters, and it's one of those things where you're watching it and you're trying to take it all in and watch it. I've even watched it twice, and it's one of those where I was reading, my apologies for keep bringing it up, but it's funny in the write-up they do in the book, they talk about that, and at the beginning it kinds of like poking fun, jab at how ridiculous. But the last paragraph or two he says, yeah, for all of its bumps and problems, I watched it once. He goes, it was okay. I watched it a second time. He said, I really enjoyed it. He's like, on the third and fourth viewing, he goes, I think it's one of the greatest things I've ever watched. Because there is so much going on and so much to unpack in this film that at the surface, you could take it as a bubblegum lighter film, but if you just scratch and start paying attention a little bit more and catching, like the fact the first time I watched it, I didn't catch right away that Shakes was dressed up as the snake. You're not quite, because he's not like up in the forefront, and you have Boogaloo as the devil who really takes up the scene, but you don't notice that Shakes is subtly dressed up as the snake, and he's the one that gives her the apple. And you're just like, wow, I did not see that. And I'm kicking. And then you've got people dancing around. There's a two-faced person dancing in here. There's bits of people who have fairly elaborate makeup and stuff that are just in a scene for a brief moment, and it's like, wow, Napoleon is in hell. They put Napoleon, he shows up, in that whole sequence. And then, like you said, then you talk about the lobby dance while they're waiting in Bim's lounge, which happens just before the hell dance, where it's this huge choreographed thing. They're singing about business, which if you pay attention to the lyrics, that's another thing where you said it's ahead of its time. It is. I'm like, that could be applied today, where everything is show business. You live for the crowd, the cheers, and you die for the encore. And I'm like, ooh.
Well, yeah. And then there's also the song Speed, which, I mean, that if that isn't just about contemporary social media culture, I don't know what it is. And you stop to think about what we think of the quaint 1970s, 1980s, like, wow, they really had no idea what was coming. Like, culture's moving too fast. Oh my God, America it's this drug addicted thing that needs attention and speed. Well, welcome to 2021.
Well, what's great about the Speed song too, is you could take it two different ways. And And I read somewhere online about how it mentioned that it was, and it was my faux pas. And again, Catherine was polite enough to correct me on it. So it was a great interview, as I am a dork, and she was wonderful. Uh, but it mentioned that it was like a Canadian American production, and she's like, Canadian. I'm like, that's what it mentioned, because the speed song especially, and some of the underlying themes. It almost felt like either anti-American or at least anti-capitalism messages going on through this film. And when you get to the speed part, you could either take it as it's a commentary, or it's either being vicious, as in poking fun at the US, or just describing how things are in the you know what I'm saying. It could be either directly like this is America that's evil, or this is just how America is. There's two different ways you could take that song, I think.
Well, it's also, I mean, you're talking about I don't know if this is going as deep as the filmmakers, if they're thinking along these lines, but you're also talking, Cold War situation in 1980. You got, well, I'm not sure when exactly this came in, but, Reagan was about to, Carter was out, Reagan was in, right. That kind of a thing, this show of strength, because Speed, the song, is presented in the movie as sort of an American anthem. BB is singing this to, adoring crowds and packed houses and all that stuff. It's only when you're watching it as an audience member, you're like, oh, this is kind of dark. But in a way, it's a celebration of all of those things of America and sort of a testament to what they thought was the national character. So you could look at it as a third way, which is a positive thing. But if you look at it as a positive thing, what does that say about you?
Well, I mean, the thing, Boogaloo is in the U.S. They're in the U.S. They're the nice couple from Canada that gets corrupted by the U.S. capitalism. I mean, there's no cause, but and we've just hit the first half hour, and we've talked about the lobby dance and the hell dance and everything, and the contract thing. There's also a segment in this whole contract scene which just has so much to unpack, as I mentioned before, because there's a scene where they haven't signed the contracts yet. They've already booked them for the press. They've already booked a tour for them and the first performance, and they're in New York area, I guess, and they're going across the country to LA to do their first concert in a week. And they haven't even signed the contract yet. There's that extra pressure for them to sign in. And the thing is, if you know anything about the Canon group, what's fascinating behind the scenes is the Golan, and I hope I pronounced that right, and his partner Globus, is that pronounced right? I'm
maybe. I always pronounce it Golan Globus, but I guess it's Golan Globus. Yeah, Golan Globus just rolls off the tongue much better. 98% of the world probably pronounces it that way.
Anyway, these two excellent creative gentlemen had a reputation of coming up with a poster and an idea and selling that to investors before they ever had a script. They would just crank out as many films as possible, especially in the 80s, once they got into the American market. And so you have Mr. Shakes deliver the line, because BB goes, wait, we're already booked for a concert? Like, we haven't signed the contracts yet. And Mr. Shakes says, honey, you first sell it, then you make it. That's marketing. And it's funny because that line's in there, and I'm like, are they being meta or something? Because that's like the philosophy of the Canon group the whole time they've produced films.
Well, they say write what you know. I mean, that's pretty much what it boils down to. But yeah, and that's something that I don't know how old an idea that was at the time. Was that an innovative thing or not? But it's still something that applies today.
Yeah.
And it's not just in terms of products, but in terms of entertainment, in terms of news, you get a breaking story, you get someone saying something on a blog or a podcast or an offhand remark during an interview, and there's 5,000 stories about what it all means within the next 10 minutes, and then like maybe the truth comes out a couple of days later, but by then everyone's moved on to the next thing.
Right. And then you find out everybody's prediction was completely wrong. Or you get like you had today, a well-known actress is reported dead. For most of the day, people are like, oh, it's sad, she's dead. Then you come to find out, no, she's been hospitalized. She's not dead yet.
Wait, was this the lady
Murphy.
from that 70s show?
Yeah. I forgot her first name. Murphy. Yeah, the one from A View to the Kill, and she was in a number of. She was.
So
in
she's not dead.
Last article just before we started recording said that she's not actually dead.
Oh.
She is in the hospital. She's still hospitalized for an undisclosed issue, but she's not dead.
Wow, that's a big miss. Because I read that story earlier today. I'm like, oh, that sucks. But this sucks even more. Like
it sucks even more that it's she because I guess her publicist was premature in reporting the death because the husband said, oh yeah, I was with her when she died. Tanya Roberts, that's who it is.
Tanya Roberts, yes.
Tanya Roberts. And then articles came out like within the last 2 hours stating, no, she's not dead. The hospital called the husband, said, no, she's alive. Yeah. But again, it goes along with what exactly you're saying is this thing happens just like we saw in the Apple with nothing's even really established, and already people have ran with this, like, tour and costume and record deal and interviews, and we haven't even signed the contract yet, or like this, they're dead, but they're not. Or we get people who in an interview, someone speaks, or they say one line off the cuff, and it gets interpreted by 80 million comic book blogs and such, saying, oh, we're going to get this when all it was a joke. And then, like you said, by the time it gets to the cycle, which is, what you're kind of seeing in here. And that's just like this first chunk of film. And then we get the montage of her getting prepared to be the star. Then we get to Alfie. No, his name's not Adam. He's Alfie, who is... he's the good guy of the group. Shows you it's 1980, folks. I didn't write it. Okay. She gets taken in right away by the devil and signs her soul away for her contract for the fame. They're at a party. She's the one that drinks. Alfie doesn't drink alcohol. Well,
and that's the thing. It's a complicated message because on the one hand, Alfie kind of is the square. She's the more, if you want to look at, because I think you might be getting into the whole idea of like gender roles and things like that. A more progressive take on that could be that were the roles reversed, she would be the one who'd be too timid to drink alcohol, and he's like the alpha macho man, like, give me that beer. But it is also in line with, again, what could be looked at as a sexist biblical story. Eve was the first person to be corrupted in the garden, and then she corrupted Adam, which is a nice little diversion here, which is that they were actually separated from each other. So he was sort of cast out of the garden. I think we're losing the metaphor here at some point. He has to find his way back to her and kind of rediscover his own power and his own confidence to take her away from the clutches of Satan himself. Which leads to some wonderful music, a very confusing whole stretch where we see him in his apartment. There's a lady, the same lady who got the ticket for not wearing the BIM mark. She's
Miriam Margolis, who Harry Potter fans will recognize.
I thought she looked familiar. Who was she?
She played, where is it? Pardon me. I'm going to bring, she was in Guardians of Gaul too. I like that movie. I don't care. I like Snyder stuff. Leave me alone. Don't judge. You're judging me. I know you're judging me.
I've not seen Guardians of Gaul, but I've heard really good things about it. So you're not alone.
Okay, so anyway, she was Professor Sprout in Deathly Hallows.
Okay.
She was Professor Sprout in Chamber of Secrets and in Harry Potter Deathly Hallows Part 2. So she's a veteran actress. Again, a mixture of green or new actors, including Catherine Mary Stewart, which this was her first feature ever, first acting gig, and she's a star. Not only that, with these veteran actors, which is an interesting combo. But yeah, you have go ahead, the landlady.
Well, yeah, but she's okay. She's the landlady, but when we first meet, well, okay, our first real introduction to her is in that apartment because she gets pulled over by the cop and kind of wanted, but then we see her waking up Alfie, who's he slept in or overslept or something. It's just such this like weird motherly relationship because she's got this weird like Yiddish accent and I guess he's supposed to be French Canadian, but I don't know what he's doing. But it turns out they're not mother and son, which brings the question, like, why is she just randomly in his apartment? I mean, I get the whole, like, he owed her rent and everything, but does the landlady usually barge into the place and wake people up so they're not late for their appointments?
I'm not sure. It almost felt like it was like a shared place of some sort, like a one flat. I mean, you get the idea because it is a bit of dystopian. They don't go into this part, but you get the feeling that there is a very large lower class in this world for sure. And so she may very well live within the same floor as him. I'm not sure, she might not have many people who she's renting out to. He might be the only one, it's hard to see their relationship, but
I didn't feel like they were I couldn't tell if they were roommates or if they lived in different units of this building. It's just very strange. And because at first I thought that was supposed to be his mom,
right?
But then it really, the whole thing was dispelled during their little song and dance thing where he full on grabs, like it's almost like a 3D thing. He grabs her bosom, and it's like, oops. But no, that's not mom stuff.
No, that's not mom. No, but poor
I don't care
Alfie,
how French Canadian you are. That's not mom stuff.
that is not, no. But yeah, poor Alfie. He's still holding on to the fact that he could sell love songs because at the beginning of the film, you have these rock and roll songs, and BB and Alfie are singing this universal. Literally, the part of the lyrics is universal love theme that is starting to win people over more than rock and roll, which Boogaloo sabotages. So while she's off having her rock and roll, wonderland of fame, he's struggling trying to sell his love songs, which people come right out and say, we aren't buying that, which again, we've got another bit of a darker theme going on of a statement about society not wanting meaningful love songs.
Well, no, you're right. And going back to that whole performance, Boogaloo has to cheat the results because they have this weird way of sensing people's hearts, like whose hearts are with the music. Yeah. And so the Canadian wholesome duo starts to inch up and actually overtake the kind of like bland pop space nonsense of the BIM song. And so Boogaloo says, okay, put in the red tape. So Shake gives this like a little red micro cassette to one of the programmers to slip into the computer to change the results. And he's like, what happens if I get caught? And he's like, well, you're dead.
You're dead.
Beautiful. But no, I like that too. And it also reminded me of Mike Judge's Idiocracy when they pipe in the loud blaring music to change the crowd's mood in order to affect who likes the song and who doesn't and change those ratios. Everyone just starts booing this lovely, wholesome couple. I'm like, oh, this is so Idiocracy.
It is. And later on, what's interesting too is, again, as messy as this film is, there's some really cool stuff. Like they've got the theme going on where you had Pandy and Dandy be the power couple, and BB was kind of brought into the fold only to keep her from going on her own with Alfie and becoming bigger stars than Pandy and Dandy. Yet halfway through the film, BB becomes a bigger star than Pandy and Dandy. Everybody wants her signature because you get that wonderful scene right before Alfie gets his ass kicked. You get this wonderful scene where they're coming out and Pandy and Dandy and they start selling autographs. And then once BB comes up behind them, everybody goes to BB and leaves them alone. And Pandy doesn't mind. She actually finds it amusing, and Dandy's just insulted as all hell that nobody wants his signature. They want BB's because she says the king is dead, long live the queen. And she says it so wonderfully. And I just like, that's another one of those great moments that are peppered throughout this film that you're just like, those are really cool moments.
And I didn't even pick up on that. I think
really?
I need to watch this movie again.
Yeah.
Because the first time through, I got the main story beats, I think, kind of, but mostly I was just so caught up in the what the hell am I even watching? But because with Pandy, I thought what turned her around from being a demoness was being filled up with the seed of our Adam character, Alfie, during that climactic song.
See,
I thought he was so wholesome that his sperm converted the devil woman into helping the lovebirds reunite, even at the cost of her own damned soul.
As fascinatingly grimy as that is, the first time around, in all honesty, I thought maybe being with him as well just enlightened her. Maybe the fact that he made her hit that high note, but. In the song too,
the song called "Coming" in this PG rated.
Yeah, the song "I'm Coming," which Catherine tells a great story. I know I'm totally shilling, but you should listen to the interview. She tells a great story about that song as well. But the way I took it was she's with him in that love scene. They're doing the song. You get the, Rocky wishes he was in this montage of people in beds dancing. I mean, they're all wearing the Rocky shorts. The guys are wearing the gold Speedos, but you get to the end, he actually calls out BB's name, not hers or anything. So even though he's gone through this, he's been roofied by Pandy. He still, through all this, still thinks of BB and goes after her after he gets roofied and seduced by Pandy. Look, so I think
that's no question, because it's a 20-year-old Catherine Mary Stewart.
Well, yeah,
she's amazing. Complete with a little bit of baby fat. I mean, she's just so adorable in this movie that no like Legion of Temptresses is going to tear me away from that.
She, but he loves her, and I think that opens Pandy's eyes, because you get that turnaround at the end right after that where she helps BB escape to go after and look for Alfie, and she gets in trouble in just a bit of a dark scene with Mr. Shakes where you're my serf, and he smacks her, and it's not like a stinger or music or played anyway, but rather serious. I'm just like, well, that was a bit heavy.
Well, and I don't know if that slap came before or after we see the reveal of him turning around. He's wearing this like bedazzled bathrobe.
Right,
yeah. On the back of the bathrobe, it just says "amazing stories." I'm sure.
And then it leads to because Alfie hooked up with this group of hippies led by the same Gandalf. When I heard his voice, I'm like, holy fat! I'm like, that's anomalous, but wow, he's got hair. He leads the hippies. The hippies are more in tune with Alfie, who's been singing love songs, and they sing a song that's right in line with them. And BB finds him under the bridge with them. And then we jump ahead to a period of time that apparently is a year.
1 year.
Alfie's sporting a COVID beard. Like total on beard, which, yeah, the makeup guys must have had fun with that. And they have a kid, which on the song, the album, the vinyl, there's an extended version of the song that actually where they're singing the love theme, the hippie love theme, where she mentions having a child. There's a whole verse about having the child and opening her eyes to the real innocent world again, and not, rejecting rock and roll basically. But that's not in the movie. I'm like, wow, because I'm listening to the vinyl going, wait, this is an extra verse. And it explains the child, at least, that we see later, who is supposed to be 1 year old, and they're 4. But
Yeah, I'm also glad they didn't include that verse because I wouldn't have even heard it. I was barely aware that there was a song going on because I'm like, wait a second, who is that guy with the beard? Oh wait, that's supposed to be Alfie. Wait, they have a kid? What? Huh?
there's
Why
no
did it take so
1
long?
year. Yeah, there's no 1 year later or anything. It's just
Literally, they come. It's like they're in the cave, and next they're in the woods. You're like, oh, they just came out of the cave, but no.
no, they've
And
got a kid and a beard.
and when the bad guys show up, okay, everybody seems to know where these hippies are. They're under the bridge, right? Why did it take a year for the most powerful man in the world, who had all of the corporate and government interests at his fingertips, to find a cave full of like 60 hippies, 2 of whom are his, former lead act?
Well, we don't know because it was a year. They were aloof, and it might have taken a year or whatnot before he found out she actually went to the hippies. He might have just thought she ran away. It could have taken a while to track down, in all honesty, because they tried to stay. Even if there's hippies out there, there's no guarantee she was with them necessarily.
He's also the devil.
Well, he's not really the devil, but he is the devil, but he's not the devil.
Hey, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Yes, this is very true. But it falls back to how this film in certain ways is ahead of its time, because the scene with the hippies are just singing their peaceful song in the woods with their fire. They're like, la, and the cops come, literally the police, with their shields that are now shaped like BIM shields, and they're hitting them with their billy clubs. And they the police surround the peaceful protesters, and they have their billy clubs raised, ready to beat them. And I'm just looking at going, that should not be relevant today. But at the same time, I'm like, that's a bit eerie. Yeah, and Mr. Shakes and the devil and his 2 lawyers, James Clark and Clark James, show up. I love that name. To get their 10 million out of the contract that she broke, because devil collects his souls at some point, and he felt probably it was just time to pay the debt, and all the hippies stand with her. And so they're taking him on this march, which you figure kind of they're probably going to kill these hippies, or at least do something really nasty to. I didn't think that they were just going to arrest them. You get the feeling that they're being marched somewhere nefarious, and something bad's going to happen to these people. And then out of the blue, Alfie mentions Mr. Tops. There's been no setup, no message, no previous talk of a Mr. Tops. Oh, Mr. Tops. And he looks to the sky. And if you didn't catch the religious imagery throughout the film,
which is why you said that oh my God, Boogaloo was not the devil. He's the devil, Mark.
He's the devil. Yes, I know. I was playing devil's advocate. I was just playing devil's advocate. Yes, he's the devil. I mean, yeah, and that's why Mr. Shakes is the snake. He's, but then we mentioned Mr. Tops, who, it's Tops shows up in his godlike hoopty, and takes the hippies and them away. And then there's this wonderful dialogue. Again, if you haven't been bludgeoned over the head with the religious metaphors imagery enough, Mr. Tops says he's taking the people, and Mr. Boogaloo goes to another planet, and he goes, sure, why not? I'll start over. And Boogaloo goes, and he goes, but this time without you. And Boogaloo goes, you can't do that without me. And he goes, I'm willing to give it a try. And he walks off, and they all walk off into the sky. To which, if they didn't come up with their own song, they would be singing "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," because it would have hit almost the same chords. And then the credits roll, and this film, I really enjoyed. Even for all of its bumps and oddities and everything in the mess, I enjoyed this film.
Oh yeah, and even that scene where Mr. Tops finally reveals himself, he shows up in this like ethereal gold Cadillac or whatever, and then sort of beams himself gradually down to the park, and then he's standing there and he says, "They call me Mr. Tops," which I think is some kind of like a really clumsy allusion to Sidney Poitier in The Heat of the Night.
Yeah.
They call me Mr. Tip. I'm like, you're going there, huh? But that last interaction where he's talking with Boogaloo about starting over. There's just something so great about Joss Ackland's performance and so sincere that it almost belongs in another movie. And I felt like I was watching the end of that movie and being very moved. I can't explain it, but you're right. And even completely with the rapture of people going off into the sky, it's very Grease, it's very rapturous. It is a beautiful way to end a very strange film, and I can't wait to see this again. I don't know if anyone's going to put the Apple out on Blu-ray with like supplemental features and stuff, but I'll be there.
Blu-ray. It is on Blu-ray. Yeah. I think it recently, within the past few years, got a Blu-ray release.
Does it have any extras on it? Do you know?
Yeah, I think there's extras on it. I forgot what, but I know there's Blu-ray with extras on it. It got a release. I forgot who put it out. Arrow, maybe, or I forgot who put it out, but I believe I saw it. Yeah, I believe it's on Blu-ray. Yeah, it is Blu-ray. Kino put it out in 2017. They released it. And yeah, it's I can't find a listing of extras on it, but yeah, Kino released it back in 2017.
Well, I'll have to track that down, because, and just for anybody who's watching this now or in the future, as of right now, you can, if you have Amazon Prime, it's streaming for quote unquote free on Amazon Prime for members, so you can watch it. But I'm fairly convinced that if you give the Apple a chance, you're also going to want to own it on physical media, just as sort of a trophy.
Oh yeah, it's got the original theatrical trailer, deleted scene, still gallery, on camera interview with Catherine Mary Stewart, and then also audio commentary with Catherine Mary Stewart and film historian Nathaniel Thompson.
Done. I got to get this.
So
I'm looking for in the Apple
in a brand new HD remaster. Yeah, I mean, for all of it, it's got, like I was telling we watched it. I watched it with Dawn, and she said it felt whimsical very much in many ways, even though that's not what they intended. This is how it actually comes across, as very whimsical musical. That's kind of, we both agreed it kind of is like a combination of Rocky Horror Picture Show and Grease. If you kind of blended those kind of things together, the spirit, at least, it very much has that energy. It's got a lot of energy. I mean, there's a lot of things. I'm not kidding when I've repeated myself ad nauseum that it's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of things visually that are going on that you catch after repeat viewings that you realize you didn't see before, and yeah, there's just interesting things going on. And don't go by the ratings that you see online. If you're looking for unusual musicals and you really like musicals during this time period, you've got to see this thing, because
out of curiosity, I looked up on the tomato meter what this movie how it rated, and it's got a 20% critic score, and I think something like a 42% audience score. So nobody's for this movie, but I think we are. So if our recommendation mean anything, check it out.
And I'm happy to hear that you were, because I wasn't sure how you were going to come on, and it's great to hear. And if you didn't, that's fine too. I fully see how people may not get it, but at the same time, it's one of those pieces of cinema that is it is an art piece, because you're looking at this and the sincerity behind this film. This is one of those movies where we talked about it before in the past year, and we've talked about it before on the show, how there's some movies, especially within the last, say, 15 years, that try to be cult films. They try to be cult films. They try to be the next Rocky Horror or The Room. You know, they're trying to be the B movie so bad it's good, whatever you want to categorize it as. But I think what makes movies like The Apple appealing to a lot of people, and especially within the last 10 years, it's like it's been rediscovered and got this cult following, is the sincerity behind it from the filmmakers. They legit thought they were making the next rock opera that was going to take the US by storm. They had put serious money behind it. They got star power. The scope of this thing blew my mind, the amount of people, when you realize in that opening concert footage alone, oh, that's not stock. Those are people they have hired extras because of the way they're dressed. It's not stock footage of people running. They hired these people. And you're just like, this is a large cast for what I expected for it to be. But I think it's the sincerity that makes it more appealing, and that cult classic, and just its spirit is so genuine. You could tell there's no way people were deliberately making this how it turned out.
Well, it's, and I think that's the key to it is, and I understand what you're saying about people trying to make a cult movie. It's just like how some people try and create stuff that's going to, internet content that's going to go viral. Well, I want to create the next viral sensation. You just have to make it and let it be what it is. The Room, for the big reputation that it has, Tommy Wiseau set out to make a legitimate film, and it just turned out terribly, and people picked up on that. When you set out to make something trashy or terrible, you can tell the heart's not in it. You can tell the imagination's not in it. You can tell it's trying to be like everything else, that's trying to be like something else. With a movie like The Apple, yeah, it is a mixed bag as an end result, but you can't say that anybody on that production was slacking.
No.
And the other weird thing, though, is I don't know how I would have felt about this movie in 1997. I feel like half of this is the fact that we're watching it now in 2021 in a very particular point where a lot of the themes that are so ahead of its time in 1980 are coming to fruition, again, no pun intended, today. If you're living in a period where a lot of those things were sort of nascent and not really on top of people's minds, like nobody knew what the hell social media was in 1997. We could have had half the conversation we had tonight, 25 years ago. So it's hard to evaluate this film solely on its merits versus how much of it is its merits combined with things that we're picking up on that people might appreciate if they're watching it today.
Yeah, and I totally agree. That's why we're not far off when we're saying it's ahead of its time with the themes and that it's covering. It didn't realize it was being fairly prophetic, especially the idea of corporate buying the government, or those intertwined so closely together, much less the police state type stuff and other things that are going on in this film. But also the way this film was put together. We're talking 1980. Now, we've talked before too about diversity in your cast and how a lot of films, especially in the 80s, 70s, early 80s, they were majority Caucasian. You may have one or two minorities worked in, or there may be someone who was from the LGBTQ community, but there's a joke of it. But not in this film. You have a diverse cast of people from all walks of life and lifestyles. and they're just existing in this world. They're not there as a joke. They're not there as a gimmick necessarily. They're not, at least the way I felt it. They're just, this is the world of what they pictured 1994 would be. Like you said, when Alfie shows up at the party and Mr. Shakes introduces him to his ladies, you realize none of them are ladies.
Well, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because I don't know the filmmakers. I don't know their sensibilities. I get the feeling, the way that it comes across in the movie, that they cast this very diverse cast. It's very redundant. Not to make fun of them, but right. I can also see people going to watch The Apple, particularly in 1980.
Right.
This being pushed as a broad PG-rated musical, and people being turned off. Like, what are all these weird freaks doing on the screen? You know, it's not like the filmmakers are trying to make fun of the people that are on screen. It's just that the audience may not have been ready to see that in a way that they are today. So I don't think that the filmmakers decide to make folks the butt of the jokes. If they did, that's kind of unfortunate.
I don't think so either, but
yeah, but it's shocking, because again, there's moments where I'm watching this movie and I caught myself. I'm like, no, this is not a contemporary film. This is so old that you almost didn't think these attitudes were possible 40 years ago.
No, I mean, you can take it. Yes, the group of individuals in the most diverse cast was mostly people who worked for Mr. Boogaloo, so you could take it that way, that they were more they were portraying these people and putting them in possibly the darker side, if you will. They were all in league with Mr. Boogaloo.
I hadn't even thought about that, but now you put it in my head. Thanks, Mark.
Sorry, didn't mean to. No, but
I knew they were all evil. No,
but they're not portrayed evil. That's the whole thing. I mean, they're at the party and that, but they aren't portrayed like they're villains.
And if you want to take it to a more positive meta level, I guess you could say they are at the center of the power structure of the entire world, as opposed to the kind of the mouth breathing, gutter punks that are judging, attending these, basic ass rock concerts.
Exactly. So I mean, there is a way that, but the fact that you could tell some of these people, this is their genuine lifestyle that they've cast in these roles. The role could have been a little better, but at the same time, you're just surprised for 1980 that you have this amount of diversity amongst your cast for any film in 1980, much less a film of, like this. You're just like, wow.
And that's why I made the Warhol illusion in the shows, because this could have been filmed at the factory in New York. Mm-hmm. It was very nice to see. Well, actually, one of the people that I recognized, you see her pop up occasionally, but Finola Hughes, the actress, she was on General Hospital for forever, and she was in that the early, I think it's 1996 Marvel Fox TV show of Generation X. She played Emma Frost.
Oh yeah.
She pops up as she's a credited dancer. So it was kind of nice to see.
So yeah, I mean, to wrap up, The Apple was surprising for me. I mean, I figured, I like quirky and different films, and so I figured, okay, I'll find it entertaining at least. But I didn't expect myself to sit there and watch it and go, I've got to watch this again, because I know I missed shit, and I did the second time around when I watched it with Dawn. I'm like, holy. I missed this, and I missed this, and there's this in here. And it's one of those films that it is a piece of art. It's something they genuinely were thinking they were making a big Hollywood film and we're going to break in. And unfortunately it didn't take that route, but that didn't stop these fine gentlemen from making wonderful films, which we are going to talk about over the course of the year. But I recommend it. I mean, do you, for musicals especially, do you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm just in the last few years getting into musicals, and appreciate them after almost 4 decades of not really caring or outright hating them. I would say that as a film, you can't go wrong with the Apple. Now, people are going to take that advice, go watch it, and hate me for it, but I don't really care because, as you mentioned, there's a lot to understand about this beyond just the surface gloss. I don't think all the songs work. I think
Yeah.
some of them probably read better than they are performed, but then some of them just has to be seen to be believed, like my favorite song of the last 80 years, Coming.
It's so on the nose.
Oh, it's
for
on
just
the nose, I'll bet, and on the sheets.
and on the sheet, it's one of those where briefly you're listening to the words going, oh, because she's like, pulling him towards her, I'm coming. Oh, you're saying I'm coming. And then like a few seconds into the song, you realize you're like, oh, but
When she's doing the chorus of having a sustained orgasm, which is just amazing.
Yeah, there's a beat where you're gonna go, oh, and then you went, ah.
Oh, there was a beat, all right. Anyway,
A couple beats. Oh. So there you have it, folks. Our first Canon Fodder episode, first episode of 1980s the musical. Yes, we are covering 3 other musicals that were released in 1980, because I didn't realize there were so many in that year that were released, but there were. So you want to stay tuned for that. And now I'm going to do the license to shill, and then we're going to do a special thing that we're going to be doing here on Canon Fodder going forward. But first, I want to give Mr. Ian Simmons the license to shill. So shill away, sir.
Thank you. I'm Ian Simmons, as Mark mentioned. I run Kicking the Seat, which is movie reviews from The Last Guy Anyone Asks. You can find me at kickseat.com, where I do a podcast multiple times a week. Getting into the new year, things have been kind of slow. I'm working on some stuff, mostly calendar and prepping some bigger things for the year. So check out the 625 episodes of the show there.
Dear Lord, man.
I know I've got problems. And you can also go to the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel and check out some video reviews and critic roundtables and reviews and things like that. So love to have you, and please listen and subscribe if you like it.
Fantastic. Yes, check out the stuff. He's got highly entertaining stuff, and if nothing else, just the sheer volume of content alone is worth it. But it's good content, especially their discussion about The Mandalorian, which folks need to check out.
Thank you.
It give you some food for thought for sure. So there you have it, folks. The Apple, yes, like I said, this one thing, my brain, I have so many ideas that, and I'm going to do as much as possible, because also, if you look on the thumbnail, there's a banner for 15th anniversary, because yes, 2021 is the 15th anniversary of us being here on YouTube.
Amazing.
I don't know what that says about me at all, but nonetheless, it is a thing. And so I'm just throwing pasta at the wall, going to see what sticks as far as ideas and shows and stuff. There's going to be a lot of different things coming at you. Like this idea of a total package to where you're going to get all these things in a playlist involving the Apple, like coverage, wall-to-wall coverage for it. And I've got some other films that I might be doing that with. So now, for Canon Fodder, we need you, Mr. Ian Simmons, to decide what Canon Fodder film we're going to watch next month, because I have decided not to plan crap for this year, and it's up to you. So what I need you to do is pick a number between 1 and 12.
Oh my God, the pressure. 12.
12. Well, let's load the Canon and find out what he picked. And yes, folks, the film that he picked for next month, not next year, Cobra. You picked Cobra. We are going to cover Cobra in February. That will be our Canon Fodder episode, folks. So you're going to want to stay tuned of when we do that, which week we do that on.
I love movies about health insurance. This is going to be great.
Sly Stallone behind a desk for 2 hours giving out health insurance. Now I want to see that. I want to see. Here you go. Here's your policy. You gotta sign on line 4, an initial here, and you still made it within the enrollment period. So
Cobra, you'll be covered in vengeance.
So there you have it. Yes, Cobra will be our next film. So thank you for picking that, Mr. Ian Simmons. And then I don't know what I'm going to do for the month around Cobra, but we'll do something. So stay tuned, folks. We got a lot of great stuff coming up this year. And thank you for listening. And now I think we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.